Hi there, it's Karen again. Today we're going to talk about Jacqui Farmer, who was the author of the blog called Hampstead Research, not to be confused with Hampstead Research, which is the blog that I edit, and the role that she played in getting the Hampstead hoax off the ground and helping her friends, Belinda Mackenzie and Sabine McNeil, in moving the videos into the public sphere. Now, for those of you who aren't as familiar with the early goings-on during the beginnings of the Hampstead hoax, Jacqui Farmer may not be a very familiar name to you, or you may have heard her referred to in passing. However, it's important to remember that at the time, this was a concerted effort to get those videos out, to get people paying attention to them, and really to essentially put the community of Hampstead into a state of absolute and utter terror. And Jacqui played a very important role in doing that. I've mentioned her in previous videos. We've talked a little bit about how she wrote a book called Illuminati Party, and in that book she basically gave a version of her life which made her sound like a major kind of rebel, and you know, she was hiding out from the Illuminati and making sure that she had a really good time in her life, even though these terrible people were constantly watching and being aware of what she did. Highly unlikely. No one cared what you did, Jacqui. So the point about Jacqui is that her role seemed to really be to dig into the lives of the people of Hampstead, make them as public as possible, and expose them to the rage and absolute terror that would come with believing that they were members of a satanic death cult. We've said in the past that we know that Jacqui was involved from the very beginning, and by the very beginning we mean at around the time that Sabine got involved with Ella Draper, and Ella gave Sabine the videos. We know this because Jacqui published her book Illuminati Party on the very same day that Sabine got together a group of people in a lawyer's office in downtown London and very excitedly exclaimed to them that she was going to be running this case, and that she was going to be Ella Draper's Mackenzie friend, and she was going to be taking over from her legal team. The fact that Jacqui was able to publish her book on that very day means that they'd probably had a little bit of warning, and she'd had some time to prepare it. The other thing that she did at the same time was to delete all the other evidence of herself that she could, including a blog that she was running, which had the title Conspirituality. This was a blog where it was a little bit hard to describe. She was trying to make the point that conspiracy theories and spirituality had come to some sort of a merging point online, and she was doing this by monitoring Google search terms. It was kind of weird, to be honest, and although she did manage to convince a university professor, David Voas, to work with her on a paper which they did present at an academic conference, and so Jacqui was convinced and tried to convince the world that she was some sort of brilliant, unrecognized academic. Now, what she wanted to do when she began the process of writing the book Illuminati Party, the whole conspirituality thing was absolutely written out of that book. It was not mentioned even once. So clearly she was trying to forge herself a new identity and make herself over in a different image. The other thing she failed to mention in the Illuminati Party book was that she had lived with Belinda Mackenzie as a boarder for at least a couple of years and had helped her out with at least two of her previous jobs that she'd done, I guess, both involving children and both involving being basically on the wrong side of the law. In the one case, she was involved with the Musa family, a family which attempted to beat their children so that they wouldn't have devils in them, and had their children taken away. And Belinda and Sabine and Jacqui, at that time Charlotte Ward, were all involved, along with Maurice Kirk, in attempting to have the children returned to their abusive parents. In another case, Jacqui helped out with the Holly Gregg hoax, which many people will know about. This was the case of a young girl with Down syndrome who was living in Scotland, and her mother basically went a little bit nuts and started accusing all and sundry of having sexually abused her daughter. And it created a massive scandal until people began to realize that it was essentially a crock of shit. Belinda Mackenzie was one of the major players in that, but there was another person named Robert Green who was also involved. He just recently passed away. And Charlotte Ward was in on that one as well. So there seems to be some sort of continuity in terms of her getting involved in the Hampstead hoax. Clearly she had a role to play, and Belinda and Sabine probably told her exactly what they needed to do. Although it's interesting to note that in all of the videos that she would make as Jacqui Farmer, she would very specifically state that she had nothing to do with the Society of Mackenzie Friends or Association of Mackenzie Friends, and that this was all on her own doing, and she was basically just a concerned citizen who happened to be interested in this. That turned out to be bullshit. So the first thing that Jacqui Farmer did as Jacqui Farmer rather than as Charlotte Ward was to go to a site online where you can make basically schematics that describe the relationships between people and institutions. So it was a place where you can you basically plug in the names via, I guess, some sort, if you have a spreadsheet or something, and you can plug in the names by the spreadsheet, and the spreadsheet it creates a kind of a visual representation of how these people interact. The people involved were basically people from the school in Hampstead, the church, and other assorted, institutions. And on each person's name, if you clicked on it on this site, which I'm not going to link because I don't think that these people deserve any more nonsense than they've already had to go through. But if you click on the links, it will give you the person's address, their phone number, other information about them. So the funny thing about this particular list, I guess, is that it was derived from the list which Ella gave to Sabine, and that Sabine had put into storage and had created a file for, and this would be called the 11-page document. It's referred to many times during Sabine's trial, and it was based on the class lists which had been given to the children at school. It looked as though Jacqui had taken the class lists and had extrapolated out from there and done her own research to find other people that she could drag into the hoax who had not been mentioned in the original 11-page document. So that's the first inkling that we have that Jacqui was in contact with Belinda and Sabine, and that she was getting her information from them. Another piece of information was actually something that Jacqui published on her Hampstead Research blog, probably just not realizing that we might make the connection. However, on the blog she stated that she had had a bunch of information about people at the school long before it was released online. Now, I'm presuming that she maybe just said this as a kind of brag, like, hey, I'm in the know, kind of thing. But what it did show is that she must have spoken with Sabine at very least to get that information, because Sabine and Ella were the only two people who had it, And so far as we're aware, there was no direct connection between Ella and Charlotte Ward's Jacqui Farmer. So I'm just going to read to you from that document. It was actually a post on the Hampstead Research blog, and it was titled Christchurch School Friends List. And this is a very typical kind of Jacqui Farmer production. She tries to make it sound as though she's being ever so kind and gentle while she sticks the knife in. That's just Jacqui's way. So I'll just read to you for a bit here. Hang on. This is Jacqui. It was published on the 28th of April, 2015, so about a month and a little bit after the Poffley judgment was handed down. And what it says is, we've got some interesting snippets of info we collected long before the names and addresses were leaked onto the internet. Now, there is no other way to have found that information other than speaking with or receiving information from Sabine. That's just it's basically the only way she could get it, because the information in this list is identical to the information in the 11-page document. So she says, for example, we've got videos of everybody's Facebook pages before they shut them down or deleted the info. So they knew ahead of time that as soon as they started digging into people's Facebook pages and publishing it online, those people were probably going to shut down their Facebook pages, because that's what a normal person would do if they found that some lunatic was looking into their Facebook pages and trying to create some weird story about them being part of a satanic cult that eats babies and rapes children. I think I would probably do the same thing. I suspect you probably would too. It's not nice to have your personal information mined in that way. So Jacqui goes on, there's nothing illegal about this, of course. This information was in the public domain at the time, and we are not harassing anybody. I would take extreme exception to that statement. All we are doing is trying to get to the truth. Well, no, I think what they were doing was trying to help Sabine spread a lie. That's a very different thing. No one on this blog is saying horrible things about any of the people mentioned in this case. I'll let you be the judge of that. The only people who say nasty things are the trolls whose comments I trash. Anyway, we are not going to use this Christchurch School Friends list for a video, so I thought I'd share some of the names on it, because sharing the names on a list is totally a legitimate way of making a claim that someone has been involved in something really truly terrible. Put it out online. That'll fix it. These are copied from a Word document, minutes of the CCPS Friends meeting back in January this year. Now, I'm not sure who she means by the CCPS Friends. I suspect this may be just another euphemism for the 11-page document. I've included some of our notes. Have fun, fellow tunnelers. See you down the rabbit hole. So basically she's looking into people's lives for evidence that they are satanic, murdering, child-raping criminals into a game. Have fun. Enjoy yourselves. See you down the rabbit hole. Woohoo! It'll all be so much fun. Woohoo! Let's go. Oh, I just want to remind you, as you know, that there is absolutely no implication of guilt here. So then why say it? If there's no implication of guilt, then don't put people's names online. And sure enough, here's the kicker. I've included a couple of Facebook links. It looks to us as if these are normal, decent parents who are just helping out the school as decent parents would. But if this is the case, why have they not spoken out about what is going on? And there are alleged abusers on the list. So it looks as if the school really may be or may have been a mixture of cult and non-cult people. So in other words, don't worry, these people are probably fine, but they're all criminals. I'm not going to go through the entire list, in part because it would be really tiresome, and in part because I don't want to give it any more oxygen than it already got. However, I think it's important to understand how Jacqui operated, and this is a very, very good example. This particular article is extremely typical of the sort of thing that she used to publish. So in the list of names, she had it listed like this. I won't name the people. Name 1, not mentioned as an abuser. Okay, that's fine. Name 2, not mentioned as an abuser. Okay, that's cool too. However, for name 2, she does add the person's Facebook address, so you can go and check up and see if you think she might have been an abuser, just in case. Name 3, mentioned as an abuser, and then has a link again to the person's Facebook address. Number 4, mentioned as an abuser, and number 5, not mentioned as an abuser. Also, and then gives their position at some sort of a job thing that they're talking about, and I don't know what this link leads to, but again, it looks like another opportunity. Thanks, Jacqui, to dig into someone's life and dig up dirt, which you will then interpret in the worst possible way to ensure that your belief that these people must all be satanic nutcases is confirmed. Jacqui Farmer essentially created a reign of terror in which she published daily, sometimes 3, 4, 5 times a day, some of the most disgusting and really disturbing posts in which she would encourage people, as I've said, to go digging through other people's Facebook, Twitter, whatever kinds of places they happen to be online, and bring back the information to her, and then she would give them great praise and say what wonderful researchers they were and how this couldn't be done without them, and essentially suck up to them and tell them how wonderful she thought they were. This is something that went on for a number of months. And she was aided and abetted in this by her partner, whose name is Jacqui de Boer, a person from the Netherlands. He was the person who helped her to disguise her voice. Now, I've mentioned in the past that her voice was very, very deeply disguised on her videos, and this made us wonder, when we first started looking into who she might be, whether she had something to hide, and that whether in fact she thought that her voice would be recognizable to people on the internet if she didn't somehow make it sound like a Vogon on Quaaludes, basically. And in fact, that turned out to be the case, and it was one of the ways in which we were able to positively identify Jacqui Farmer. Search for Jacqui Farmer is kind of a long story, and to understand how that story started, you have to understand how people began to come together following the release of the videos online, and then Mrs. Justice Poffley's judgment, and how we were able to kind of coagulate into small groups, which then began to work together to try to find out some way to at least stop the flow of information from harming more people than it already had. Most of us had nothing to do with the hoax. A few people, I believe, did live in Hampstead. Most were basically people from all walks of life, just people who got together on the internet, much as I'm sure Jacqui would have claimed her followers were. However, in our case, it happened to be true. We came together, I think I got involved, and I've told the story of this a few times, but I'll put the link of how I got involved at the bottom of this video, because it's a longer story than I really want to get into right now. It had to do with another blog that I was on, and basically that blog being attacked out of the blue by people who believed in the hoax, and I had no idea what the heck was happening. So I'll leave that down for you to have a look at at your leisure. But essentially, by the time we realized that we kind of wanted to know who Jacqui Farmer was. She'd been in operation for about a month. The blog Hampstead Research had only just begun, and it was probably almost exactly 4 years ago, in mid-May 2015, that we began to look. And there were two groups whose efforts kind of came together in a very interesting way that we, documented at the time. So I'm just going to go back to my notes and go over it in as much detail as I can manage here without making it really, really long and boring for you guys. So the first video that we found that was made by Jacqui Farmer was actually published on Sabine McNeil's Whistleblower Kids blog on the 24th of February in 2015. Now, at that time, there was no such thing as Hampstead Research. However, this video was titled Hampstead Research and was the first known use of that name. So I'm just going to read to you a little bit from my notes here. We noticed that Sabine had described the video. It was produced by a couple I know who had also fled the country because the police didn't like them investigating the case of an abduction of a girl. Now, I believe that this had to do with another of Sabine and Belinda's cases in which Charlotte Ward had become involved. I don't know which case that was, but that's my understanding. The video was remarkable in the sense that the narrator's voice had been deepened and slowed, but it hadn't been as badly scrambled as some of the other videos which would later appear. This was the only one that didn't have scrambling in it. It had just been distorted, but not with actual scrambling placed in it to make it, almost impossible to identify. The accent and the intonation, however, were definitely the same as in the subsequent videos which Jacqui Farmer would put out from Hampstead Research. So a couple of people, we were very lucky to have one person involved in our group who had very superior computer skills and was able to take the video and mess around with it, basically doing speeding up and changing voice ranges and all of that sort of thing, to the point where it actually began to sound somewhat like a human voice. Now, I do have a sample of that video. Unfortunately, it names protected witnesses in Sabine McNeil's trial, and so I'm not able to share it with you. However, we have discussed it on the blog in the past, so I will put a link to that discussion so that you can have a look there if you're interested. And that video allowed us, it didn't tell us who Jacqui Farmer was. However, it did allow us to rule out particular suspects. For instance, there was another person, again with the first name Jacqui, and we thought, well, maybe she's Jacqui Farmer, what do we know? But when we compared it to a known video of her, it was very obviously not her voice. The real Jacqui Farmer, Charlotte Ward, has a rather posh accent. She has clearly gone to a posh school, and in fact she sort of downplays that but does mention it briefly in Illuminati Party. She says that she went to a school that her parents had to really struggle to send her to. We would later find out that that is another one of her lies. Her parents were quite well off and were well able to send her and her sister to this school. So she does tend to twist the truth to suit herself, but that shouldn't be terribly surprising. So on the 20th of May, we had been messing around with this video, the people in our group, and there were maybe 5 of us involved in this. On the 20th of May in 2015, we heard from another group that we didn't even know existed. Someone who was in that group discovered that we were doing this stuff and got us together. And this other group said that they had found 3 YouTube channels in which the videos sounded like they had been narrated by the same voice that Jacqui Farmer was using on that first Hampstead Research video. And they had done previous research. So I'll just read to you here. It says, the name we identified as Charlotte Ward, who wrote a research paper with Professor David Voas at the Institute of Social Change at Manchester University, published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2011. And that was about the conspirituality thing that I told you about earlier. So the chain was roughly the YouTube channel Eddie the Cat 7. Somewhere the word conspirituality popped up, and one member of the other group that we didn't know until we didn't know them until we knew them. One member of that group Googled the word conspirituality and came upon Jacqui Farmer's, Charlotte Ward's rather, other material, and then there was a comment left on a forum that was signed "Regards Charlotte Ward" by a poster with the handle Carly A. Now, if you were at all involved in watching this thing unfold on the David Icke forum, you might remember that there was a person there who would post under the name Carly A. and claim she had nothing to do with the Hampstead hoax, but that she just happened to know some of the people involved. That was Charlotte Ward, or Jacqui Farmer. So the second group had a lot of very useful links that they gave us very generously, and we were able to back up the suspicion of who we were talking about, and the sort of fixed video, the video that our person was able to fix, kind of added the cap on the whole thing, and basically said, yeah, this is who we're talking about here. Then things started to get interesting, because as we began looking at videos on the Eddie the Cat 7 channel, there were certain clues left behind. For instance, the cat in question was actually David Shaler's cat, who had lived with David Shaler had lived with Belinda Mackenzie, and his cat's name was Eddie. As far as I know, well, he may still be alive and may still be living with Belinda. I believe David left him behind when he moved out. And then there's a whole bunch of videos, all of which seem to have to do with conspiracy type material. Yes, the channel has a bunch of videos featuring Belinda Mackenzie, and Sabine is listed as a subscriber to the channel, and as you know, they were very deeply involved in promoting the Hampstead hoax. The voice is identical to the cleaned up version in the Hampstead Research video, and then there's a page on which Jacqui inadvertently left her Google homepage open, and it gave us her email address, which told us that her email name told us her identity, essentially. Perhaps one of the biggest ironies of our discovery of the identity of Jacqui Farmer was that when we did it and she found out that we had done it, she immediately accused us of all sorts of horrible things, like hacking her computer and being government agents and all sorts of things, rather than accepting that she'd left a few loose ends which made it possible to identify her. I do find it incredibly ironic that a person who was encouraging people to rummage through other people's Facebook and Twitter and YouTube accounts and Google accounts to find information on them, to link them to being members of a cult that eats babies and rapes children, that this person would take exception to a few people trying to find information to give to the police to help to stop her. Now, As it happened, because she was out of the country, the police were not able to act, and she is still at large as far as I'm aware. However, at the time that we gave this information to the police, and we did give it all to them, they assured us that this meant that there was now a warrant out for her arrest should she reappear in the UK. I feel personally that that's not terribly likely to happen. I think she's abroad, and that's probably where she's going to stay. Her partner's family lives in the Netherlands, and I expect that that would be where she would turn up if she did decide to come back to Europe. The last I heard, she was on some sort of drug-fueled journey in Brazil. I believe that was the last time I saw a posting from her. So who knows? But it's nice to know that the information is there, we do have it documented, and she no longer is able to do the work that she did. I feel as though having people know who she was helped to convince her that she needed to stop. And hey, that was a worthwhile outcome as far as I'm concerned. So I hope that that helped to, sort of unravel the Jacqui Farmer mystery a little bit, and explain a little bit of how someone who got involved in this hoax from the very beginning was actually able to be stopped even without the use of getting the police involved, because they couldn't do anything. So yeah, it was a victory for the people who were involved in finding her identity, and I still feel pretty proud of it, and I think most of the other people who were involved feel the same way. So that's it for today. I think the next time we will go into a few other of people who have helped to promote the Hampstead hoax, but I hope you're finding this useful, and I hope you will tune in next time. Take care. Okay, bye-bye.